On the night the laws disappeared, nobody heard a sound. In the quiet town of Elkhaven, tucked between the endless cornfields and the interstate that flashed like a silver vein under the moon, every street lamp still glowed, every traffic light still blinked obediently from red to green, and every porch flag still hung in the heavy summer air. But on paper, in the locked metal cabinets of City Hall, the ordinances were gone. Not burned, not stolen, not even erased. They had simply stopped existing. It began at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time with Ordinance 1.01, on official recognition of Elkhaven as a municipality under the state of Ohio. For over 100 years, it had sat, dusty and smug, at the front of the town's municipal code. At that precise minute, the text shifted, the ink glimmered faintly like a mirage, and then the words unstitched themselves from the page. If anyone had been watching, really watching, they might have seen the letters rise, atom-thin shadows curling into the air and dissolving into nothing. But no one was watching. Not yet. 900 miles away, in a cramped student apartment in Washington, D.C., Ayaan Rahman was still awake, bathed in the pale blue light of his laptop screen. It was almost 1 a.m., the kind of hour when even the city seemed to breathe slower. But his eyes were fixed on a PDF titled Municipal Ordinances and the Hidden Constitution, a study in local governance. He took a sip of his coffee, grimaced, and pushed his glasses up his nose. The coffee was cold. His mind wasn't much better. Okay, he muttered to himself, scrawling down. Federal law, state law, municipal ordinances. Federal preemption, Dillon's rule, home rule charters. Why is this more complicated than it needs to be? He had come to the United States from Bangladesh to study law, and most days he loved it. The structure fascinated him. The idea of the U.S. Constitution as supreme law, the layers beneath it, the way Congress drafted statutes, how state legislatures made their own, and how cities, counties, and towns filled in the details with ordinances. But tonight, under a deadline and a brutal case briefing tomorrow, the complexity of local governance felt less like elegant architecture and more like a labyrinth built by someone who held a personal grudge against law students. He highlighted a paragraph. Municipal ordinances typically govern matters such as zoning, public safety, noise regulation, smoking bans, and local taxation. He thought of Dhaka, of noisy streets and informal rules no one had ever written down, but everyone followed. Here, the informality was buried under shelves and shelves of written rules, zoning maps, land use codes, building standards, snow removal ordinances. So, he whispered, the city tells you where you can build a bakery, how tall your fence can be, when you can park on the street, and whether you can keep chickens in your backyard. Freedom, but regulated. He smiled faintly and clicked open another tab, the online municipal code of some small town in Ohio that his professor had mentioned in class. Elkhaven, Ohio, Municipal Code. Article 1, General Provisions. Article 2, Administration. Article 3, Public Safety. Article 4, Zoning and Land Use. He scrolled lazily, scanning noise ordinances, curfew rules, a surprisingly detailed section on bicycle helmets. Someone really cared about bicycles, he murmured. His cursor hovered over Ordinance 3.14.120 on unauthorized use of fireworks. Ayaan imagined a Midwestern 4th of July, kids with sparklers, nervous parents watching the sky. Then his laptop screen flickered. Only once, like a blink. The code page reloaded itself. Seriously? He groaned. Not now. He checked the Wi-Fi, full bars. But when he looked back, the top of the code page had changed. Where it had once read, Article 1, General Provisions, there was a short red message. Error. Municipal code unavailable. Please contact town clerk. Ayaan frowned. Refreshed the page. Same message. He typed Elkhaven, Ohio ordinances into a search engine, clicked a cached link to the same code, and saw only that same red line. He was about to switch to another example town. There were thousands of municipal codes online when a new email notification popped up at the corner of his screen. From Professor Eleanor Hayes. Subject: Updated assignment instructions, urgent. He clicked it open. Ayaan, I know it's late, but something very strange has come up about the Elkhaven case study for tomorrow. If you're still awake, and if I know you, you are, please come by my office at 7:30 a.m. before class. Bring your notes on municipal ordinances and anything you've found on Elkhaven. This is not a drill. -EH. He blinked. This is not a drill, he repeated. What, is this a constitutional crisis? He glanced at the clock. 1:03 a.m. Okay, he sighed. 7.5 hours. Sleep or read more about zoning variance procedures. He rubbed his eyes. Sleep wins. But as he closed his laptop, he couldn't shake a faint sense of unease. What could possibly be very strange about a small town's municipal ordinances? And why did the code just vanish? At that very moment, 5 time zones away and 9 years in the past, a man in a gray suit stood in a windowless room beneath the National Archives in Washington, D.C., staring at a single sheet of yellowing paper. He knew every word on that page by heart. He had spent 20 years of his life studying it, parsing its clauses, arguing for and against its meaning in rooms where no cameras were allowed and no minutes were written. The sheet was labeled The Silent Ordinance, United States Super Secret Enactment, 1934. The man's name was Marcus Vell. Officially, he was a senior legal advisor to the Office of Legal Counsel. Unofficially, he was the custodian of a secret older than almost anyone alive. He raised a gloved hand and traced the title, stopping before his fingers could touch the fragile paper. He said, "It's starting." Behind him, another figure shifted in the dimness. Dr. Helena Park, a constitutional historian with clearance levels that technically did not exist, stepped closer. "Are you sure?" she asked. Her voice, usually crisp and confident in lectures about the Federalist Papers, sounded thin down here. Vell nodded toward the bottom of the page. Look, the ink at the bottom, where the enforcement clause was written in tight, careful legal prose, was faintly blurring, the way words look when tears fill your eyes. But no one was crying. "It's synchronized," Vell said. "The first layer is unspooling at the municipal level, local ordinances. The lattice is breaking." Helena swallowed. "Then we don't have much time." "No," Vell replied, his eyes still on the page. And for the first time in nearly a century, the silent ordinance might be failing. Helena took another step forward. "Do we know why? Did anyone trigger it?" Vell finally turned away from the page, his eyes dark and tired. "The ordinance was drafted to operate automatically," he said. "Self-enforcing. A meta law that keeps the architecture of American legal reality intact. Once activated, it was supposed to be beyond human tampering. That was the point. No president, no Congress, no court could override it entirely." Helena shook her head slowly. "We wrote a rule that rules the rules." "We didn't," Vell corrected softly. "Our predecessors did. But yes, in 1934, after the upheavals of the Great Depression, a special commission of constitutional lawyers, justices, and other experts drafted it, a secret ordinance that would sit under everything, ordinances, statutes, regulations, a hidden layer to keep the system coherent. And now it's unraveling?" Helena said. Val nodded. Starting where the law is thinnest, municipal ordinances, the quiet edges of the system. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim black folder. On the front, in silver letters, were 4 words: Protocol, Local Horizon, Initiated. He said, "Find them." "Find who?" Helena asked. "The hinge points." Val replied, "The people who are already touching the edges of what's happening. The town clerk in Elkhaven, the law student in DC, the councilwoman in Phoenix, the code archivist in San Francisco, the ones drawn to the gaps." Helena hesitated, and when we find them, Val looked back at the silent ordinance, now visibly dimmer. "Then," he said quietly, "we ask them to help us read Elkhaven, Unwritten Ordinances, as remembered." Underneath, he wrote, 1. Parking on Main Street prohibited between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Marianne watched, arms still folded. "Anything happening?" she asked. He stared at the words. They stayed words, no shifting, no symbols. "Not yet," he said. "Maybe because I'm not ordaining anything. I'm just recording what people remember. A memory is not a law. It's evidence of a law. Maybe whatever is happening can't erase evidence, only the thing itself." "Comforting distinction," she said dryly. "In court, maybe. In real life, people just want to know where to park." He wrote a second line. 2. Noise above 60 decibels prohibited after 10 p.m. in residential areas. He had no idea what the actual decibel limit was, but he was testing the boundary. The text shimmered, just for a fraction of a second, like heat above asphalt. Then it snapped back into clarity. "I saw that," Marianne whispered. "So did I," he said. He underlined the word prohibited. Again, the faint shimmer. "Okay," he said slowly. "So something doesn't like prescriptive language. Prohibited, required, shall. It reacts. But it hasn't fully scrambled my words because maybe I don't have the authority to make law here. I'm just an outsider scribbling in a notebook." He looked up at Marianne. "Would you mind writing the same sentence? You're the town clerk. You do have legal authority in relation to these ordinances." She hesitated. "If this is going to melt my brain, I'd like advance warning," he said. "It shouldn't. It hasn't hurt anyone so far, has it?" "Not physically," she said, "unless you count stress headaches." She took the pen from him and, underneath his line, wrote, 2A. It is hereby prohibited to create noise above 60 decibels after 10 p.m. in residential areas. As she lifted the pen, the words twisted. Ayaan watched, breath caught. The letters didn't fade so much as turn inside out, collapsing into the looping alien symbols. Not all at once, but like a wave moving from left to right across the line, erasing meaning as it went. Marianne dropped the pen. "Okay, that's enough proof for me," she said, voice tight. He stared at the transformed sentence. "So you see it too," he said. She gave him a look that would have made a lesser person wither. "Mr. Rahman, the day I start hallucinating my town's laws turning into spaghetti is the day I check myself into a very quiet place. No, I see it. It's real." He nodded slowly. "Then we have a rule," he said. "Whatever is happening can distinguish between a mere description of an ordinance and an actual legal enactment. It targets enactments, not recollections." "Congratulations," Marianne said dryly. "You discovered a rule that rules the rules." The phrase jolted him. A law about laws. The silent ordinance. Only now silently failing. Elsewhere in Elkhaven, other rules were bending. At the corner of Pine and 3rd, a police officer named Victor Ruiz pulled over a pickup truck that had rolled through a stop sign. He walked up to the driver's window, heart pounding in the familiar, unpleasant mix of adrenaline and procedure. He'd done this 1,000 times. It was muscle memory. "Good afternoon, sir. You rolled that stop sign. License and registration, please." The man behind the wheel, a farmer with a sunburnt neck, snorted. "Rolled it?" he said. "I slowed down. Nobody was coming. There's a full stop required at that sign. Town ordinance..." He stopped. The words caught in his throat. Town ordinance... what? He knew, in the way you know your own phone number, that there had been a rule. He'd cited it, written it on tickets, something like failure to yield at stop sign, Municipal Code Section 8.04.110. But when he reached for the number in his mind, it wasn't there. The place where it should have been was blank, like a tooth pulled from a gum. He tried anyway. "You still have to stop," he said, weakly. "It's the law." "The law where?" the driver challenged. "Show me." He thought of the blank codebooks, the hurried meeting that morning when the chief told the officers. The laws are still in force, even if the books are blank. Until the state tells us otherwise, we enforce as usual. He thought of his oath, to enforce the laws of the town, state, and United States. He also thought about how, when he signed someone up for probation or wrote a citation, the judge always asked, under which ordinance? If the ordinance didn't exist anymore, not just on paper, but as a coherent part of legal reality, what was he enforcing? His head throbbed. "License and registration," he repeated, voice dull. The farmer grumbled, handed them over. Ruiz walked back to his cruiser, sat heavily, and stared at the ticket book. He wrote the man's name, the date, the location. Then, where the ordinance number should go, his pen hovered. He decided to try. He wrote, "Violation of Municipal Code, Section 8.04.110. As he finished the last letter, the ink on Section 8.04.110 blurred, then elongated into those same strange symbols that were appearing in the codebooks. Ruiz swallowed. He finished the ticket anyway, ripping off the yellow copy and walking back to the truck. "Here," he said. "Sign." The driver glanced at the paper. "What's this?" he demanded. "You wrote some kind of nonsense. Failure to stop under, and then what is that, Arabic?" Ruiz looked. On his copy, the symbols were different, not the same looping script he saw, but zigzagging marks, almost like circuitry diagrams. They shifted, faintly, as if refusing to hold still. "I don't know," Ruiz said honestly. "Well, I'm not signing that," the driver snapped. "You can't even tell me what law I broke." He crumpled the ticket and threw it back at Ruiz's chest. For a moment, his training screamed at him to escalate. Contempt of officer, littering, multiple counts. But another part of him, quieter and older, whispered, "What are you arresting him under? What law? Name it." He realized he couldn't. "Sir, I strongly advise you to make a complete stop at every sign, for your safety and everyone else's. You're free to go." The driver gave him a suspicious look, then drove off, this time coming to a perfect, exaggerated, complete stop at the intersection. Ruiz watched him go, feeling something fundamental in his world shift. If you can't name the law, does it still exist? If it exists only in habit and fear, but not in text, is it still law or just custom wearing a badge? Back in the records room, Ayaan's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He stepped away from the table, answered. "Hello?" "Mr. Rahman," a measured voice said. "This is Marcus Vell, Office of Legal Counsel." Ayaan stiffened. He recognized the name from the local Horizon packet, the custodian of the silent ordinance. "Yes, I'm in Elkhaven now, at Town Hall. I've seen the effects." "I know," Vell said. "We're monitoring the region." "How?" Ayaan asked. "Classification levels you don't need to worry about. For now, I need a field report, in your own words. What does it feel like there?" Ayaan glanced at Marianne, who was leafing through a stack of blank pages with a frown. "It feels," he said slowly, "like the rules are still being followed, but the rule book is dissolving. People remember what they're supposed to do, but they can't point to why, at least not in the usual way. And whenever someone with legal authority tries to formalize a rule, the text corrupts. It's selective. Descriptions by outsiders seem less vulnerable, but enactments or descriptions made by insiders with authority get scrambled. Interesting, Bell said. That suggests the silent ordinance is maintaining some kind of integrity check on formal legal acts, but its link to the underlying legal text is corrupted. It may be rejecting any new attempts to instantiate ordinances because it no longer recognizes the municipal layer as valid. That sounds bad, Ayaan said. It's not ideal, Vel agreed. We are also seeing anomalies in 2 other towns and 1 tribal jurisdiction, though not as severe as Elkhaven. The pattern is spreading along what we might call structural fault lines. Fault lines, Ayaan repeated. In geology, stress accumulates at fractures between plates. When the pressure is too great, the fault slips. In law, fault lines are areas of ambiguous authority, overlapping jurisdiction, unresolved conflicts between state and local powers, contested home rule charters. He paused. Elkhaven has a long and messy history of zoning disputes with the state, a patchwork of grants and revocations of home rule authority. It is exactly the kind of place where the silent ordinance has had to constantly smooth conflicts in the background. That makes it a stress point. When the meta law fails, the cracks appear where it was working hardest. Ayaan sank into a chair. "And what do you want me to do?" he asked. "I'm just one person with a notebook." "Observe," Vel said. "But more than that, talk to people. Find out how they conceptualize their obligations and freedoms